This happened about 2 years ago, during my junior year of college. I work as a campus librarian assistant at Boston University. Basically, I help students find resources, check in returned books, and close up the building on certain evenings. Because of that, I'm usually one of the last people in the library at night. During finals week, the place stays open until 2 in the morning, and I'm always there until the lights go off. It was mid-October, that specific kind of Boston fall where the leaves are this dark amber color, and the air has a cold bite to it by 8 o'clock. I remember the smell of damp wool and coffee that night. The reading rooms were packed, probably 60 or 70 students, hunched over laptops and textbooks, earbuds in, running on caffeine and stress. The kind of quiet that isn't really quiet at all, just the low hum of anxiety. I was doing a routine shelf check on the 3rd floor when the first thing happened. One of the study carrels at the far end, the one tucked behind the periodical section, the one nobody ever used because the overhead light flickered, had a book sitting on the chair. Not on the table, on the chair itself, placed upright like someone had set it down carefully. The title was facing the wall. I walked over and flipped it. Gray's Anatomy, 1901 edition. We didn't have a copy that old in general circulation. I figured a student had pulled it from special collections without authorization, wrote a note to follow up in the morning, and left it on the desk. At 11:47, the power went out. Not a flicker, not a gradual dim. The whole building just dropped to black, completely and instantly, the way power only cuts when something has gone seriously wrong. The emergency lighting kicked in after a moment, that sick yellow glow from the stairwell signs, but it barely reached the stacks. Students started talking at once, pulling out phones, some of them laughing nervously. I got on my radio immediately. Facilities said there was no scheduled outage. They had no idea what happened. I was trying to manage the 1st floor evacuation when my supervisor called me on the radio and told me to do a sweep of the upper floors before we locked up. Standard procedure. I grabbed a flashlight and went back to the 3rd floor. It was empty. Or it should have been. I was halfway through the periodical section when my flashlight caught something near the carrel where I'd found the book. The book was gone. That wasn't what stopped me. There was a set of wet footprints on the floor, leading from the emergency exit door at the back of the stacks. A door that required a staff keycard to open from inside toward the elevator bank. They were perfectly shaped. Someone had walked in from that door with soaked shoes and gone toward the elevator. The print stopped about 10 feet from the elevator doors like the person had just ceased. I radioed my supervisor. She came up. We both stared at the prints for a while without saying anything. She said the emergency exit logs showed that door had been opened at 11:48, 1 minute after the outage. From the inside, I pulled every log. No keycard was registered to that swipe. The system showed a valid access event with no associated credential. The facilities guy used the phrase "phantom read" and seemed unbothered. I was bothered. The power was restored by midnight. The book was never returned to special collections. We never found out who it was. I still worked the late shifts, but I stopped doing 3rd floor sweeps alone. 2 months later, a study carrel on the 3rd floor was reported to facilities because students kept complaining. The light above it flickered every time someone sat down. This happened about 1.5 years ago, during my 2nd semester, as a resident hall monitor at UT Austin. My job is what it sounds like. I patrol the dorm floors at night, handle noise complaints, deal with lockouts, and make sure everything stays reasonably calm. I'm usually alone on duty between midnight and 6. The job's mostly boring, which I actually preferred. I had a system, a routine, a specific loop through the building I ran every hour. It was late April, warm, humid Texas spring, the kind of night where the air smells like rain before the rain arrives. There'd been a severe weather alert on the university system since around 9 potential flash flooding. Residents advised to stay indoors, avoid basements, stay away from ground floor windows. Standard stuff for Austin in spring. I'd sent the floor group chat a reminder, logged it, and moved on. The first odd thing happened. Around 1:15, I was on the 2nd floor doing my loop when I heard a door open and close at the end of the hall. Not unusual. Students keep weird hours. But when I got to the end of the hall, every door was closed and there was nobody in the corridor. I knocked on the last room, 214, to check if a resident needed anything. No answer. I marked it routine and kept moving. By 2 a.m., the storm had escalated. I got an alert from the university emergency system. Flash flood warning upgraded. Water rising on the west side of campus. All buildings advised to move residents above the 2nd floor as a precaution. I started doing floor knocks, waking people up and getting them moving to the 3rd and 4th floors. When I got back to room 214, I knocked again. Nothing. I checked the occupancy roster. The room was registered to a sophomore named Marcus. I used my master key. The room was empty, but the window was open. Rain was coming in sideways, and the floor near the window was soaked. On the desk, there was a half-eaten bowl of instant noodles, still warm. His phone was charging on the nightstand. His shoes were by the door. Marcus had left without his phone, without his shoes, in the middle of a flash flood warning. In the middle of the night, I called it in immediately. Security started a building sweep. I went down to the ground floor to check the exits. Technically, residents weren't supposed to use them during the alert, and the alarm would have triggered. No alarm had gone off. We found Marcus 40 minutes later. He was sitting on the stairwell between the ground floor and the basement, completely dry, staring at the wall. When I asked him what he was doing, he looked at me like I'd woken him from a deep sleep. He said he didn't know how he'd gotten there. He said someone had knocked on his door, and he'd followed them. He described the person. Tall, dark raincoat, standing at the end of the hall. He said they'd waved him out without saying anything, and he just followed, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I showed him the corridor footage from 115. There was no one in that hallway, because there was only Marcus, opening his door, looking in both directions at an empty corridor, and then going back inside. The footage from 2:30 showed him leaving his room on his own, walking calmly to the stairwell, sitting down, just sitting. His student health file showed no history of sleepwalking. He transferred to a different dorm the following semester. I asked him once, before he left, if he remembered what the person in the raincoat looked like. He said they didn't have a face, just a shape. He said it like it was nothing. This happened the summer before my senior year, when I was doing an internship in the biology research lab at UC San Diego. I worked as a research lab intern, mostly data entry, sample logging, basic prep work. The lab studied pathogen resilience in extreme temperatures, which sounds terrifying but was mostly just a lot of repetitive freezer checks and labeling. I'm usually in before most of the grad students, and I stay late because I can focus better when the building's quiet. It was late July, San Diego summer, which means sunny and warm on the surface, but the lab building's AC runs so aggressive that by noon the hallways are 58 degrees. I wore a jacket to work every day in the middle of summer, the kind of building that feels disconnected from the outside world. The incident started small, the way these things always do. I noticed the freezer log was off. We kept a physical log for the ultra-low freezer, the one that held the oldest archive samples, going back to research from the 90s, and each entry required a sign-in, a timestamp, and a sample ID for whatever you were accessing. Standard biosafety protocol. I was cross-referencing the physical log against the digital access record when I found an entry that didn't match anything. July 19th, 2:47 a.m., no name, no sample ID, just a timestamp. I brought it to my supervisor, Dr. Reyes. She looked at it for a long time and said the building's electronic access log would show who had badged into the lab that night. She pulled it up. The lab had been accessed at 2:47 a.m. by a badge that belonged to a researcher who had left the university in 2011. The badge had been deactivated at the time of departure. Theoretically, a deactivated badge couldn't open anything. Facilities came and checked the door mechanism. Everything was functioning normally. The badge reader showed no fault history. The security office opened a report and told us to let them know if anything else came up. 3 days later, the freezer alarm tripped at 3 a.m. I wasn't there, but I saw the alert on my phone: temperature deviation. Door may have been left ajar. I checked the physical log the next morning. There was another entry, same handwriting as before. This time there was a sample ID written in, a sample number I didn't recognize. I searched the sample database. The number existed. It was a sample archived in 1998 and marked "Do not use contaminated." It was still physically in the freezer. When Dr. Reyes checked, it was exactly where it was supposed to be, untouched, still sealed. She was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said something I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said the sample had been involved in an incident in 2009. A junior researcher had been found in the lab at an unauthorized hour, in front of that specific freezer, holding the sample container. The researcher had no memory of being there. He was removed from the program. His was the badge that had been used to access the building. I asked her if she thought someone had gotten in somehow, used his old badge information, pulled a prank. She said that was the only rational explanation. She said it in a tone of voice that made it clear she didn't believe it. I finished the internship. I never worked a late shift there again. The freezer log still sits in that lab, and nobody can fully account for 2 entries in it. Plus, matters, Hussier, place, minors, matter, matters, matter, and doubly, 1. The sample is still there, marked the same way it always was. Sometimes I think about the researcher from 2009. I looked him up once. He went on to finish his PhD at another school. In an interview with a research journal, he mentioned briefly that he had experienced a period of memory loss as a young researcher that he attributed to stress. The interview was published in 2023. I read it on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of summer, sitting in the sun, and I got that same cold feeling I only ever felt in that lab. If you enjoy mysterious stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Midnight Whispers 2 a.m. And don't forget to press the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching.